Thank you. Roger.
Hey Roger, how's it going?
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Good. Let me just make sure I can share. Could whoever the host, could you make sure I'm a co-host?
Yeah. You should have sharing capabilities.
It's just I tried and it said
Well, let's see here. Let's make sure.
Probably just make Roger the host because it's his meeting.
Yep, let's go into where'd you do that, JJ? Security.
No, you go and hit the three buttons above his left
Oh
ear,
yeah, there we go.
then he'll just run it. There you go.
That work, Roger?
no. Perfect.
Perfect.
I'd appreciate if you don't kick us out, Roger. That'd be great.
I will not kick you off. Big celebrations in Minnesota tonight.
Yeah, there is quite a few with the Twins.
Twins, yeah.
Sounds like I'm not as crazy of a baseball fan. I think we remember at the conference we had determined that baseball sucked, right, JJ? So
That's untrue. Yeah.
no, Bob joked about it, but yeah, it's pretty cool for the Twins fans. It's been what 18 years, I think, or so since they made it.
They had
So,
lost 18 straight games before last night.
yeah.
Actually, it's funny because the manager is a good friend of my son. He's from Rhode Island. He's from just up the
Okay. Yep.
My son played baseball with him growing up.
That's kind of a fun connection then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's plenty of excited Minnesota fans. We make it to the first round of a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so Roger, JJ's got a room in the local arena with some coaches as well. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, yep. So he's actually on a TV. So if people are moving around there, we got a
Not a
room
problem.
there. So let's give everyone a couple more minutes and then we'll let you get started and we'll kick it off with an introduction as well.
Yeah, I'm just letting people in right now.
Perfect.
What's up, Coach? Sure. I'll believe
There
that
we
one.
go. It's there. Go this way.
I wonder if we can mute ourselves without causing the problem with
You should be able to, JJ. Yeah.
the recording. Since Roger's the host, it should record what he
I think it
says.
was already recording when I first got on.
Yep. It shows recording on my end
Yeah.
too. It'll go into your Zoom file, JJ, since you don't use Zoom a whole lot. It should go into your Zoom log.
Sweet.
Give it another minute here, or once we hit 7:15, we'll get started. All right. Well, Roger will be respectful of your time too. So we really appreciate you joining here. Everybody that joined, thank you. This is recorded, so we'll be able to share it on the parent resources tab for us as well. But JJ Pettit, myself, and Brad Hermsen, Brad's on here as well. Our hockey director had a chance to meet Roger at the Minnesota Hockey Directors Conference. So we got a chance to speak with him the opening night and then spend some time in some sessions. So we had reached out to Roger to help talk to Winona coaches here about maximizing player development, how we as coaches have a bigger impact than we may realize on these young athletes. And then certainly getting into the modern game a little bit and how it's evolved, how it's changed, and how we as coaches can adapt to that and affect our player development experience for each individual player. And then lastly, there's just a little bit on parent education that weaves through, but we're going to utilize this as a parent resource, parent education tool as well. And Roger is currently the director of player development for USA Hockey. So a lot of coverage. He does plenty of these, a lot of good resources, and we're super grateful to have him here. So with that, Roger, I'll kick it over to you, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you very much, Drew, and thank you to all that are taking the time to listen a little bit and talk a little bit of hockey tonight, and just so that you know where I'm coming from and my background. I'm currently out east. I'm just south of Providence, Rhode Island, kind of between Boston and New York City, along the coast. But I'm originally from Apple Valley, Minnesota. Grew up there and came out east to play college hockey at University of Maine, and basically have stayed out east ever since. But still have a lot of family, friends, and a lot of really good hockey people that I'm very close with from your guys' home state. And I think tonight, since it's really geared towards your association, I would just say to all of you that we can kind of steer this in any direction you want it to go in, where I can be most help of as far as just letting you know what's happening in other parts of the country, but also what I've seen over the last 14 years, working both on our men's and women's side, working with our top coaches and our best athletes and on our national teams, but also working with different countries in their player development philosophies and theories, particularly with Sweden and Finland. And then also doing some work with actually quite a bit of work with NHL teams as well. So again, this is your guys' night, and I would just use it any way you feel is going to benefit you guys the best in terms of being coaches and administrators and leaders of your youth hockey association. I would say this, that Minnesota by far has the best setup of any place in the country. What you have in your community-based programming is by far the best in terms of the impact on families and on kids. The club model has taken over pretty much the rest of the country. And there's positives to that, but there's also negatives to that. Too much hockey too soon, too serious, overcoached, expensive, invasive in terms of travel. A lot of negatives there. I will say that the one area that Minnesota, I think, could get better at, and I think what happens is I think because it's got such a great tradition of hockey that people aren't as open-minded to maybe looking at things a little bit differently. And I think if you don't look at things a little bit differently, then others will eventually pass you by. And so you always almost got to be ready to see what's the next best thing out there. I always use the analogy that would you go to a dentist that used 30-year-old techniques and philosophies? And you think about what the dentist was like when we were kids compared to what it's like now in terms of the pain and invasiveness. You think about a guy like Bobby Orr with 7 knee surgeries. How much longer would he have played if they'd had the technology they have now to do arthroscopic knee surgery? Bobby's scars on his knees are about this long, and now would be a little pinprick where they go in there and just clean some stuff up. So it's just the world's changed, and I think it's really important that we as the adults and the people that are in charge of the game for our young kids, that we evolve with it, because there is a better way it's a better mousetrap, and I've certainly learned that over the last 14 years. So having said that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share parts of the presentation that I shared with the group that was at the hockey directors meeting But again, I want this to kind of move in different directions, and I can jump off this. I can pull video up. I got a lot of information that I can share with the group in terms of player development and what it should look like on a daily basis. I just kind of mentioned it, but understand the modern game. It's really important to understand where the game's at right now compared to where it was just even 10, 15 years ago, and certainly in my generation. I had phenomenal coaches at Apple Valley. I had Larry Hendrickson, John Harrington just came off the 80 Olympic team, winning gold, and Mark DeCenzo, who just was the captain at Michigan State. And so I had basically like a college or pro coaching staff in high school. So I was really fortunate, but I would even say in those guys, Larry's unfortunately passed, but John and Mark would tell you, because John's now the women's coach at Mankato, that they've evolved over the last 35 years. So understanding where the game's at, what's the best way to approach young athletes, and then embracing practice. I think a big issue we have in our country right now is the competition, the drive in competition versus practice, right? What's happened is practice has become broccoli for not only the athletes, but for the adults as well. And the competition model has become like dessert, right? And because it's entertaining, right? Mom and dad get to see their kid play in competition. Coaches don't have to really be that prepared. They can sit on the bench. They can open the door. They can, coach up a little bit, talk to the kids. But practice is a lot harder, and it's more demanding. But that's the game changer, particularly even where you guys live, where the kids aren't getting nearly as much unstructured play time as certainly the generations before them. Everything's overcoached, overstructured, and everything they do in sport and in school is dictated by the adults. And so what we've really done is we've really taken away the best teacher of all, and that's the pond or the outdoor rink. And that's, for the most part, it's gone. Now, people have backyard rinks and people do go to the local rinks, but not like it used to be. I remember going, my mom and dad are from Hibbing, and my grandfather ran the outdoor rink up there. And I can remember going back at Christmas time, and there'd be 50, 60, 70 kids on the rink. And I was so excited when my son was about 12. We went back to Minnesota. This would have been about 10 years ago. And so excited to get him out to Grandpa's rink and have him skate. There was one kid. I was telling him all the stories. We're driving up from Minneapolis up to Hibbing. I'm like, oh, you just wait till you see this. This is amazing. It's just going to be hockey heaven. And we went there. There was literally one kid. And I was just devastated. And so what it told me was that you guys still have the best setup, but even that's changed. And so what you do in the inside structured world is really critical. And I tell coaches and administrators all the time, probably the only opportunity your children have to get better is in your practices. And so you've got to really make sure you're hitting grand slams. You can't be hitting singles. Those practices have to be a 9, 10 out of 10, because you can't mail in a practice, because that's an opportunity wasted. And these kids don't get much opportunity to get better. And I don't care if you're looking at a Bantam B player in Apple Valley. And I didn't make my high school team till I was a junior. And so, that doesn't happen very much anymore. But player development is for all levels. I always tell administrators and coaches, you have two responsibilities: build passion and help the kids get better. If you do those two things, you're probably going to win more games than lose. You're going to keep kids in the game longer. And as they get to a critical stage in their development, they're going to be more willing to do the extra stuff. And that's really important. It's critical. And so I showed this video to the coaches, and I said, when you walk into the rink on a daily basis in Winona youth hockey, when you walk into the rink, what does practice look like? And I'll just show you the differences. And what's important about that video is that so many of our practices in youth sports are coach centered. They're designed with what we call blocked drills, meaning that the pattern that the kid's going to skate in or perform in is determined by the coach. They're going around cones or open space where there's nobody's going to push back, and there's no decision making whatsoever. And so if I tell you those first two, practices that you saw in that video, player development is probably a 4 out of 10, just by adding conflict or competition or a more game-like situation. Player development is going to be up around an 8. You doubled it. And so what's Winona's philosophy when it comes to developing hockey players on a daily basis? I can do some stuff around cones. I can do some stuff around in open space. I can do blocked drills. And what a block drill is the pattern is determined by the coach. There's really nobody that's going to push back. There's really no decision making, and there's really no accountability. And so what on a given day, what's really happening? And so just to have a mindset that we're going to really attack this and attack it seriously. And so for us, these 5 aspects need to happen every day. Every day, these 5 things have to happen in every practice. And if I were to rate those 5 things, fun is number 1. It's got to be a priority. If they're not having fun, they're not getting better. You're not building passion. The second thing, there's got to be constant decision making. It's got to be uncomfortable, but safe and positive. But it's got to be uncomfortable when it comes to the mental and emotional aspect of practice. Practice should never be easier than the game. But if I walk into a rink, which I do a lot, and I evaluate a practice, I can guarantee you it's way easier than the game. And that makes absolutely no sense if you think about it. If kids are going to really get better, why would we ever make training easier than the game? Especially when it comes to making reads and understanding the game and making decisions and putting them in game-like situations. So number 1 would be fun. Constant decision making would be 2. Looks like the game will be number 3. That balance between challenging an athlete but making it too hard is really a fine line. And then puck touches represents repetitions, not necessarily puck repetitions, but just repetitions overall. So the 5 elements of a great practice, that's got to happen every time they step through the door. And so the practice planning or the preparation by the coaches is really critical. Now, I'll tell you, you can go on USA Hockey mobile coaching app. You can go online. The practices are already done for you based on the age group. And you don't have to follow them to a T, but if you follow them, your kids are going to get better. And those 5 elements are going to be there in pretty much everything. Doesn't have to be every single time, but I would say probably 80 to 90% of the time you want to check off those 5 boxes. Okay. And I shared with the people in Plymouth a couple of weeks ago some numbers that were done by Ontario Minor Hockey up in Canada. 1 efficient practice will give a player more skill development than 11 games. So 1 well-run practice is worth 11 games. Now think about the commitment for a game, especially you guys got a pretty good setup, but you might travel, 30, 40 minutes to a game. But think about the amount of time that's committed on a game day. And say you have 12 kids on your team, right? Say you have 3 forward lines and 4D. If you really break down how much game time your kids get on a game day, it's a third of that ice time to start with. And that's if nobody takes a penalty and everybody does the same length of shifts. So you're going to commit a kid for probably 3 hours on a Saturday and Sunday for literally about 10 minutes of activity. In no other aspect of their life would you stand for that. There's no way you would sign up for a piano lesson that cost you $100 an hour and your child went there for 3 hours and they touched the keys for 10 minutes, you would be banging down the door demanding your money back. Yet we stand in a rink and we see the dysfunctionality and we cheer it all day long. And that's fine, but just understand your kids aren't going to get better. We need to have games. They need to have fun doing them, but it's not player development, right? 99% of the feedback coaches give players is when they have the puck. But ironically, players only have the puck in their stick for 2% of the game. So the other 98% of the game they play without the puck, how are they getting better? And they're not. And so the optimal number of players in a drill is anything 2-on-2 and above. If we're doing 1-on-1, we're not getting the other critical stuff, which is play off the puck. And all the decisions, all the hard work, all the routes, all the reads off the puck is really what's going to determine how good a hockey player you are. Because that's 98% of the game. And so there's just so many little things that go into player development. It's not just the physical aspect, it's the emotional, it's the mental, right? It's what it means to be a good teammate. It's how to deal with failure. It's how to deal with adversity. It's all that stuff that's going to not only help them in sport, but it's going to help them in life. And so we've got to make sure we're cognizant of all that, right? We try to get our coaches to understand that if I'm coaching the Pee Wee B team and they give me 12 players, I'm not coaching the 12. I'm coaching the individual player. I'm coaching 12 different players. Because what each player needs at a different time in their path is completely different. It's not the same. How I deal with the top third of the team is much different than how I'm going to deal with the bottom third. And the biggest mistake that's made in youth sports, competition does not drive development. When I'm 10 years old, I can go up to the Excel Center and sit in the Wild locker room and practice with the Wild. I'm not going to become an NHLer. Competition does not drive development in youth hockey, in youth sports. What's going to drive development is those 5 elements, and particularly having fun, but the balance between challenging the player and building confidence. If I'm constantly chasing and I'm not touching the puck, you're better off being in the top third of the B team than being in the bottom third of the A team. Just from a development standpoint. And so you really got to look at it. How am I running practice? Is my best players always going up against my other best players? Or is my best players going up against my weaker players? And if I put the weaker players together in a station, is mom and dad going to get upset because they're not with the better players and the better players are going to drag them along and make them better? That's not how development works. Development is an individual player program. Now, when they get to 14, 15, 16, yeah, competition can help drive development. But at 14, 15, and 16, the responsibility for development is now the athletes. When the athlete's younger, it's mom and dad and coach. When the athlete gets older, it's now the athletes. And so how I handle the young athlete and the environment I put them in or her in is really critical to them being able to handle the responsibility for their own development moving forward. Any questions so far? Okay. When we talk to NHL coaches, we talk to our national team coaches on both the men's and women's side. When we talk to NHL scouts, coaches, what separates the good from the great? It's hockey sense. It's decision making. So are we putting the kids in situations where they're having to make reads and they're having to make decisions consistently? That's what the pond was so great at. The pond was always forcing you to make decisions. And listen, skating is a really important part of the game. But I spent a lot of time at the outdoor rinks in Minnesota. I never did edge work. I never did power skating. I went and played. And if we lost the puck, we made a tape ball. And if it got too cold and we was tired of playing without a puck, we went home. We didn't start doing edge work. We got our skating through play and through competition. But the decision making happened over and over and over and over again. And there was no right or wrong. It was us learning, what worked and what didn't work based on the situation. Now, on the outdoor rink, there was some vertical integration in terms of age and ability level, right? And so the one big mistake we've made in youth sports is we put all the same birth year. You guys still have the 2-year window for most of your teams, which is awesome. But in the most parts of the country, it's the 2010s all play together. And then the best 15 2010s are all on the same team, right? So we don't really have any vertical integration. Why vertical integration is important at a young age isn't necessarily the competition. It's the role model. It's the rabbit. It's go do it like that kid's doing it, right? So if I have an association like Winona and I'm have a mite practice, but I have some mites who have brothers or sisters that are peewee or bantams, I ask those kids to come to practice with their gear on. And I say to those peewees and bantams, you're going to get another practice. You're going to do the same thing these mite kids are doing, but you're just going to do it faster, better, and stronger. And they're going to watch you and they're going to pick up some things and they're going to try to mimic you. It's a role model. It's kind of disappeared in our culture. And it's kind of an unfortunate situation because it's safe, right? I can go compete against a player that I know isn't going to take my spot and I can chase him around in practice, but I know they're not going to be on the ice on game day. And it's somebody's brother or sister, or it's mine. That's a healthy thing, right? If that makes sense. So when we talk about skill development, I always say to coaches, I say, when the players don't do what you want them to do, or they're making all these mistakes, or you get frustrated on Saturday or Sunday during the game, is it because of the player or is it because of the coach? And I would tell you 90% of the time, it's because of the coach, because they design drills that look like this. Obviously, one of the best American-born players ever to play the game, Patrick Kane. Unbelievable technique with his hands. But if you notice where his head's at and what the drill is asking him to do, it's actually forcing him into a dangerous situation when it comes to game day when his head's down. And so this has limited impact on his development because the pucks don't move. The pucks aren't going to take the puck away. Nobody's going to try to knock his block off because the puck's 6'3" and not an inch off the ice. So this has limited impact on him being a good hockey player. What makes Patrick Kane great is his ability to scan the ice, make a read, and then apply the technique of his hands to make the right player to possess the puck. But my technique's important, my skating, my stick handling, my shooting. But what's more important is the read that comes before that. Then I apply the technique. But we're technique driven. We're going to do 30 minutes of power skating before every practice, where there's no decisions, there's no conflict, there's no chaos, there's no pushback. And so I'm going to do 100 crossovers, and I'm going to be the greatest crossover in the history of hockey, but it doesn't make me a hockey player. And so just thinking about the balance between those 5 elements and why fun, decision-making, and game-like is so critical. And there's a famous saying in soccer, all great players are great jugglers of the ball, but all great jugglers of the ball are not great players, right? And so what makes a really good soccer player is obviously the ability to handle the ball, but also the ability to find space, to read the play, to play with teammates, to run routes off the ball, to get open, or to defend. All that other stuff that's way, way more important than the ability to juggle the ball. But teaching a kid or putting a kid in a drill where they're juggling the ball all the time, that's easy. That's the easy part, right? Because these 4 roles are what should happen in every drill we do, right? Offense with the puck, defense on the puck, and then offense and defense away from the puck. And I would tell you that 98% of the games played on the bottom 2. So we're putting kids in those situations where they have to make decisions and work hard so that they can get the puck more often. And so I was showing the coaches some drills and some things that are done in practice. So if you notice here for the coaches, if you notice here, the players before they started, they're not facing the puck. And that's because when the coach spots the puck in the drill, we want them to turn and have to make a read. We don't want them to stand and make hockey decisions. In this particular game, this is the University of Nebraska, Omaha, where we ran some practices and did some videotaping. I drew 2 lines to simulate a neutral zone. And I'm trying to get the players to understand how to use the width of the rink. So the rule of the game is 2 things. 1, you can't go offside, and you can't carry the puck over 2 lines. The puck's got to move. So if I carry the puck over the first line from my defensive end, right? So red's defensive end's at the bottom of the screen and blue's defensive end's at the bottom of the screen. If I carry the puck over the first line, I got to look to find somebody to move the puck to. And the only way you're going to be good offensively as an individual or a team is if you can force defensive rotation. If I don't force defensive rotation, I'm easy to play against. And so I got to learn how to use the width of the rink, right? But oftentimes our kids, especially young age, get the puck on the breakout and they go straight up the rink and they attack the defenseman that's right in front of them. And it's just not going to work at the next level. It still happens with a lot of our best players, but that's why drills like this are critical. And I have a simple rule. If you don't follow the rules of the game, I'm going to yell new puck and I'm going to take the puck away from your team and I'm going to give it to the other team. And you're going to have to defend to get it back before you get a chance to do it again. Because I'm not going to reinforce a bad habit. If I want my dog to sit, I can't give it the treat if it doesn't sit, because then it will never sit. But oftentimes we just get through practice with the kids doing everything wrong and we give them the opportunity to have their turn. In hockey, it's never your turn. It's never your turn in hockey. It's one of the greatest things about our sport. It's not like basketball. It's not like football, right? You give up a touchdown, now you get the ball. You give up a basket, now it's your turn to have the ball. In hockey, you give up a goal. You got to win a face-off, possess it, and go the other way. It's never your turn. But in practice, we often bail out laziness, poor decision-making, and poor execution with an opportunity. In hockey, the opportunity has to be earned. So we need to create that environment positively in practice, if that makes sense. I saw chat.
That was just me, Roger. I was
Okay.
just letting people know they can use the reaction to raise their hand if they feel comfortable, or to type in a chat, or just so they can engage if they've got a question.
Yeah, so I'll let this play out a little bit. You can see we spot the puck to the goalie, get them involved. These kids really struggle. There's like 7, one kid went offside. We yelled offside. They don't get it. They think it's still their turn. We're like, no. It's Blues puck. It's Blues puck. They finally figured it out. We're not going to bail them out. Can't go offside. You can't carry the puck. You can't dump the puck. You got to make a play. And they really struggle with the concept. They start to get better, but that's part of coaching, right? The patience and the accountability to the right stuff. You can't just let them take the shortcut, because it's not, the other team in the game on Saturday and Sunday is not going to let them take the shortcut. Okay, so just an idea of what practice should look like, right? And so just to show you the evolution of what can happen, instead of starting a drill with a dump in, we're going to start a drill with a scrum, right? We're going to start a drill with the scrum on the board. And then what we're going to do is we're going to send the other players, other two players in each team are going to be sent in at different times. So now we're adding layers to the game, right? Now it's a quick one-on-one. Now whoever gets in there first has to read. Do we have the puck? Do we need to support it? All that kind of stuff. So this is what, in my opinion, practice 80% of your kids' practice should look like this. It's fun, it's game-like, there's constant decision-making. I can make sure my best players are going against my best players very easily. And there's a lot of things I can do off of this. Okay. There's another little drill, little one-on-one. Now, these kids play pass until the whistle blows. Whoever has the puck when the whistle blows is on offense. Whoever has the puck, doesn't have the puck, is on defense. So there's no pattern. It's all a read. The goalie has to make a read, right? So there's no predetermined who's on defense, who's on offense. It's all based on situations and decisions. This is a little 1 second game in the neutral zone where everybody's playing. And if you notice, we have a goalie playing like a regular player out here. Right? They're handling the puck, they're competing, they're having fun as well. The goalies that aren't in the game are out here in the line too. There's a goalie right here who's a passer. So everybody in the game can only have the puck in their stick for a second. So they got to use their teammates on the outside, or they have to use their teammates in the middle of the game. And it's just a 3-on-3 or 4-on-4, whatever numbers you want to use. And as you evolve these drills, what I do with better older players is I'll put red and blue, I'll stagger them in between each other. So now not only can I use my own teammates, but I got to really pick my head up and find them rather than just throwing it to an area. Because right now they can cheat the game because they know their teammates are all on one side of the rink, right? But if I now put them every other player, they have to really find their teammate. They can't just throw it blindly. So you always got to be careful with however you constitute practice that you're not reinforcing bad habits, which would be a blind pass, right? If I stay this way the whole time, they're just going to throw blind passes to the outside because that's their relief, if that makes sense. And the last thing we talked about, I talk about this a lot, is skating is a huge part of the game. But can I find areas in the game, hidden pockets, where we can do skating without shutting it down and doing line skating and focusing on just one particular aspect of skating? So here we're going to do pivots. And you have to do pivots around your stick before you can enter the game. Okay, so now it's how you enter the game is based off your technique and your work ethic. So all kinds of little things you can do in practice to really challenge your players. I have players exit drills and do skating all the time. Now I have them staggered. There's 2 players up front, there's 1 player out back, so they're going to come into the game in layers, right? They're not all going to come in at the same time, which is a part of the game. So any questions there? Anybody have anything they want to discuss or talk about?
My hand's up. I didn't hit the reaction button. My name is Dylan. I'm
Hey, Dylan.
one of the Mike coaches. Before I forget, so you brought up the Omaha. We got Coach Kemp's son-in-law on this call too. So I don't know if you knew he would be here.
Cool.
My
Yeah,
question.
I know Kemper. I've known Kemper for a long time. Kemper made a huge mistake probably 30 years ago. It came down with me and David Lassonde to be the assistant at Wisconsin, and he took David. And then you know what? This is the curse. This is the curse for Coach Sauer and Coach Kemp. I was at the University of Vermont at the time. My next recruit was Timmy Thomas.
Oh wow!
And they took David. They took David because he was a goalie guy because they needed a goalie. They wanted to keep that tradition. So yeah, no, I've known Kemper for a long time. Great guy.
Well, clearly you guys are still friends, so
Yes. Oh yeah.
I guess no hard feelings.
Yep. I saw him when we were there. So
So as a might coach, you talk about, and we fully embrace the idea that a lot of these skills are going to be learned and applied during gameplay. But even looking at those USA Hockey ADM practice plans, there is some block drills.
Yep.
And so I guess my question is there a place for that stuff when you're trying to demonstrate the time to use certain skating skills, and then hopefully work in a progression where you put them into a situation where they can make the decision to use them? Or is the gameplay going to be the key for everything?
So for me, it's situational. How many practices a week do the kids get, right? And where are the kids at in age? And so I would say to you, if I've only got 2 practices a week and my kids are 12 and under, I'm gonna do some block stuff, but 80 to 85% of my practice is gonna be like what you just saw. And
Okay.
there's gonna be block stuff within it, like that skating,
Yeah, I like that a lot.
right?
With-
And so, but there's a purpose for the skate. And as they're skating, they're watching what's happening and they're making reads. Okay, the guy next to me on my team, he's a halfway, he's 2 steps ahead of me on the pivots. So I know he's going to have a better chance to be first touch. So I'm going to move to a place to support him. So it's almost like reading a forecheck, right? And so not only am I getting my skating, but I'm making the players make decisions while they're skating. And that's the most critical part to me. One of our former coworkers, Ty Hennis, is the assistant coach for the Penguins. And he started out as the skills coach for the Penguins. And he's Crosby's, like, Ty is Crosby's binky. Ty will never do a single drill with any of the Penguins that doesn't have some type of decision in it. Now, most of it might be blocked if he's just working with one guy, but he's going to force a decision. They're going to go somewhere because of a read. They're not just going to go somewhere to go somewhere. They're going to go to their backhand or their forehand, or they're going to turn to the left, or going to turn to the right, not because they're working on turning to the right or left, but because the decision forced the move. Which is
Great.
that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I think there's a balance, Dylan. I think the danger, that the reason why I think it's so important is the danger that I see is it's way out of balance the other way.
Yeah.
And
I
part
mean-
of that's because the coach has to give up some control.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes our ego gets in the way and we want to control everything. And we want to tell everybody how to play and when to go and how to go and why to go. And that's not coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There is a lot of ego in coaching and parenting too. One of the things with the competitive play that I worry about is that if you have a lower skill level player, and it's not always, you can't always put kids with other kids who have the exact same skill, but then they're watching the play too much.
How do you
And
solve that though?
I don't know.
So if you're coaching the Russian Red Army team back in the 80s, 90s, and you had Larionov and Makarov and Fetisov and Fedorov, far superior than the bottom half of the team. How do you make sure those guys are continuing to get better, and how do you make sure your weaker players are actually touching the puck and getting some reps?
I don't
You
know.
never go one-on-one. You never go one-on-one. Larionov goes 1 against 2. Larionov and Fedorov go 2 against 4. So now you're forced to play off the puck. I'm the best player on the team. In the game, I'm probably going to have the puck a lot. Now in practice, I'm forced to play off the puck. I'm forced to defend. Right?
Okay. So you handicap those better players to even the playing field.
You nailed the most important word in the art of coaching, and that's handicap. You handicap your best players' attributes, That's why we've been pushing cross ice hockey forever, because if you really think about it, the kids who dominate little kid hockey are the best skaters, not necessarily the best players. You don't give a skater, a good skater, ice. You take away their ice, because now they're forced to use their head and their hands.
Yeah.
Because at some point everybody's going to catch up. You can't just dominate with your feet. The beauty of McDavid and McCarr and McKinnon and Kane and those guys are they're physical specimens who can skate, who have great technique, but they're really, really smart hockey players. That's the generational player.
Mhm.
But if I said to you, you guys all grew up in a hockey community. If I were to say to you in high school hockey, Bantam hockey, if I were to ask you to give me a body type of who the smartest players are, who would they be?
Smaller guys.
Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau's, Marty St. Louis, who I coached, right, for 4 years. I've known Marty since he was 15. Why? Why are the smaller players the smartest?
Because they have to make decisions.
They were handicapped.
Yeah. With the size. Yeah.
They were naturally handicapped. So I say to all my friends, I say, I just pray for your kid to be smaller and slower than everybody else. Because most coaches have no idea how to handicap. And that's
Thank
what
you.
practice is for. Practice is for getting better.
I got a question for you, Roger.
Yes, sure.
Artie Moran here, another Mike coach. On the topic of reads or decision making,
Yep.
how do you coach that, or is it more of an experience for the kid that you build an environment for that? If you
Let
could
me
talk
throw it
about
back at you. What was your first name again?
Marty.
Marty. Hi, good name. If I were to say to you, Marty, when do you think you need to step in with a player? What would your answer be?
Uh,
And
if
I
I see,
don't want you to, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, because this is a really good conversation. It's a
if
great question.
I see confusion or a disengagement to what's going on.
Okay, so if now I'm going to talk to you as Marty, the player, and you're on a bench in the game or you're in practice, and every time you show me that as a coach, I come skating over and I start talking to you. What's that going to do to you?
Not sure.
So my son, when he was in 7th grade, was struggling with math bad. He'd come home, he'd sit at the dining room table next to me and my wife, and he would have that look of just bewilderment. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. And he would sit there and he'd puff and da-da-da-da. And I never once bailed him out. Never once. Because I'd rather have him get a D, but let it be his work, than me give him the answers and get an A. Because that's learning. The struggle, we've got to figure out a way for our kids to struggle safely, positively, and productively. So how you react, and if you're constantly trying to coach them up every time they make a mistake, they're going to turtle and they're going to shut down. So if I'm a coach, I'm going to look for patterns. I'm going to look for consistent things that happen positively and negatively. And that's what I'm going to base I'm going to step back more than I'm going to step up. Because especially at 8, oh my God, I mean, hopefully they're making thousands of mistakes in every game they play. And I guarantee you, if you ask them a question, what'd you think? They probably already got the answer. They probably know more than we give them credit for. We just don't need to get in their grill every time they do it. And I might go up to them and say, so what did you think on that play? Well, you know, I go, well, what are you going to do next time? Well, I think I'm going to try this. Perfect. Try it. Right? Let them. It's like farming. You plant the seed, you water it, you fertilize it, you take the weeds out. It takes a while for that plant to grow, but you can't speed farm. Because if you speed farm, the crop dies. But what we do in youth sports and with young kids is we try to speed farm the hell out of them. Because we're trying to build the best 12-year-old in the world. And not many best 12-year-olds end up being the best 16-year-old. They usually burn out and don't make it. There's exceptions, but for the most part, the best players are players that had some adversity or struggle in their past. Great. That's a great question.
Hey, Roger, JJ here again.
Hey.
So as a parent thinking about this stuff, how can we put ourselves in a position to support that development long term? Because there's a lot of forces pulling us, whether it's private lessons or opportunities to control lives. And I think you used the term snowplow in our meeting. But how do we balance that while still feeling like we're contributing positively? Like, everybody's very afraid of not doing enough, and not that's real, but it's a feeling we have.
That's a great question. And one thing I would say to you, as from a coaching side, is you're dealing with somebody else's kid. You're not going to stick. If you see a mama bear, you're not going to go punch one of the cubs in the face, because you're probably going to get attacked. So you respect the fact that you're dealing with somebody else's child, and how they deal with that might be different than what you might deal with it, right? That's one. Two, I think when it comes to parenting in sport, you're there to support, to be positive, to lend a hand, but to, like, listen, I hate to sound like an old fart, but like, I think my dad's generation, their parents never even went to the games. Like, they didn't even know they were in a sport, right? And then it slowly got more and more, we got more and more invested because the cost went up and the time went up. And so now we're at everything. We're at practices, we're at everything, right? Which is fine. That's great. That's great to support. But it's the conversations that you have, it's the car rides home that you have. And I don't ever begrudge somebody for wanting their kid to be the best. But again, you can't speed farm that. And so we get impatient and we think we're helping, but it can have real long-term consequences. Usually parents figure it out with their second or third or fourth child. Because by the time the third one comes around, they're like, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to let them go with somebody else to the games. I'm going to let somebody else take them to practice. But we get excited with the first one because we're right there, we're involved in it and all that stuff, which is great. There's positives to it for sure. But I think we just got to be cognizant that it's a game. And it's amazing how the little kids, they might play terrible, and 5 minutes after the game, it's over. And we'll hang on to it for a week. Right? Maybe we can learn something from the kids.
And then you also told us a story about the smartest goalie you ever met. Had skated for a while or something.
Yeah, so Timmy Thomas played for me. That's the story I was telling about with Wisconsin. And Timmy, played for us at Vermont. And Timmy was a goalie. He skated out. He didn't really start playing goalie till he was like 12. Grew up in Michigan. Nobody wanted him. I got him as a 20-year-old. And nobody wanted him after 4 years. And he's one of 6 goalies to win 2 Vezinas, a Conn Smythe, and a Stanley Cup. So he's in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, but he's this close to being in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He just didn't play a long time because nobody believed in him because he was unorthodox. But what made Timmy so great was 2 things. One, he was ultra competitive. He took every shot in practice like it was Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. And he read the game better than any goalie I've ever seen. So his ability to understand which way, if it was a 2-on-1, somebody was coming off his backside, he knew which way they shot, and he could read with their hips and their feet and their eyes where the puck was if the puck was gonna be moved, and he read all the information that his defenseman was giving him based on where they were trying to force the puck, and then what the shooter or the puck carrier was information he was given, right? So their ability to read the information, hips, eyes, shoulders, where the puck's being held, right? Facial expressions, all that kind of stuff, all that information that comes in the computer and then spits out a decision. That's really important. That's why deception on the other side, selling misinformation, is so critical, right? Head fakes, deeks, where, you know, fake shot, fake hip turn, fake heels, all that kind of stuff. That's why the best players have a ton of deception offensively. That's why a guy like Patrick Kane, or a guy like you know, if you think about a guy like right now, like, you know, McDavid's a little bit different because he's a physical specimen, but you think of a smaller guy like Panarin with New York. He's not very fast, he's not big at all, he's not super dynamic, but people back off of him because they don't know what he's going to do. Like he's selling them pass, but then all of a sudden this puck's off his stick. You know, Cole Caulfield's like that a lot. You know, Cole's I know a lot. I see Cole a lot because I'm very close with Marty and watch all their games and go up there, you know, once a month to kind of be with them. And Cole's a perfect example of a guy who gets space, but isn't very big. He's a pretty good skater. He's pretty dynamic, got an elite shot, but there's a lot of deception in his game. So defenders back off because they're just not quite sure where to go because he's selling them misinformation all the time.
Can we teach deception?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, in fact, I would tell you that, like, if you want to work on change of direction, you want to work on here, I'll show you an example of it. Here's a really simple example of how you teach, how you don't necessarily teach it, but you're going to, kids are going to do it naturally. So if I want to work on skating, right, I'm going to create this little box, and I'm going to tell the kids on the outside, you got to get 2 feet in and 2 feet out to get a point. And if you get tagged, you're in the middle. And so what ends up happening is, if you watch the kids, can you guys see that?
No, not yet.
Okay, my bad. I'd probably help if I shared it. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we're good now.
Yes, we can.
So, little box with bumpers. You got to get 2 feet in, 2 feet out to get a point without getting tagged. Now, you watch the kid's head fakes. You watch a kid like fake like he's going to go in the box and then come back out. You watch the kid on the inside fake like he's going to go to one kid, then go to the other kid. Like, there's a lot of little deception that starts to happen with the kids naturally, and they got to scan the ice because, you know, they got to know where the space is. They got to know where to go without getting tagged. Now they're working on balance, agility, coordination, change of direction. Like, there's your power skating. They just don't know they're doing power skating, right? And so I'm looking at this going, this is too easy. Now watch the deception now. Watch the little shoulder fakes, head fakes. I'm going to sell, I'm going to go one way, I'm going to go the other way, right? That's deception. So it doesn't have to be taught. Your kids are going to naturally do it because they want to win. So the drill or the exercise teaches it, right? And so another example of that would be, you know, I don't know if I have it here. My bad. Like a bumper tag, right? Where one kid's on one side of the bumper, the other kid's on the other side of the bumper, and one kid's got to get around it and tag them. Well, there's going to be shoulder fakes, head fakes. There's going to be all kinds of misinformation that both are going to throw to try to get the kid to buy into a certain place to go. They're going to trap them. And so that's the kind of little stuff that you can do where they're having fun. There's decision making. You got a concept of deception, which is a pretty deep concept for little kids, right? And then they're competing and they don't know they're doing. I call it Flintstone vitamins. They're doing something good for them. They just don't know it's good for them. Once you put them on the goal line and put them in lines and do edge skating or power skating, click, they tune out. They're like, okay. I mean, just think about this mentality. Those of you that are in the corporate world, think about if your marketing director said, we're going to do some marketing. We're going to do some commercials. It's going to be a minute-long commercial but the first 30 seconds is going to really suck, but the last 30 is really good. And if you hang in for the first 30, you're going to get a really good second 30. Hey, kids, first 20 minutes of practice is going to really suck. It's not going to be fun, but we need to do it. And if you work hard, we'll go do some fun stuff at the end. Probably not a good way to get kids into buy into practice. Maybe you do it the other way. Maybe you start with games, right? Get them excited about practice, get them to buy in, give them ownership. So it's just some ways, some things. Some of the things we do is just because of tradition, and if you really dissected it, it makes no sense at all.
Hey, Roger, I got one for you too. So something we get, questions on, right? Or we think of as coaches too, is these station-based practices, perfect designs on paper, right? And then incorporating, systems is a word we hear a lot in youth hockey. What's your take on systems, introducing that at a certain level? What age level is that more appropriate for?
Great question, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I'll show you a perfect example of that. So if I wanted to do power play penalty kill, right now the blue team's on power play, the white team's on kill. The white team got 4, the blue team's got 5. The nets are up because I don't want the kids. The reason why I move the nets is because our kids use the lines on the ice for spacing. So their gap and where they go is based off the markings on the ice and not the read of where the defender and my teammates are, which is completely wrong because that's might be the worst place to go. The 5th player for the white team is behind the goal line. They get it. They give it back. They've got to support it. Now it's a power play breakout. The punishment for blue being bad on the power play is they now have to change. 4 new blues come out to kill. The 5th player goes behind the goal line. So you have to earn your chance to be on the power play by doing a good penalty kill. Every kid's on power play. Every kid's on penalty kill. And we don't bail anybody out, right? We set rules. If you score, you make it, you take it. You don't give the puck out back to blue, because if they know you're going to bail them out, they're not going to work hard. They got to earn the puck. And so the white team here forces a bad shot. It goes wide of the net. They miss the net, right? Puck goes down. Blue regroups. White has to change. Now blue's on power play. There's your systems. There's your concept, right? Penalty kill, power play, spacing, puck support, puck possession, retrievals, because the puck's live till it goes over the goal line. So all the stuff that happens in a game, and I'm not telling them where to go. They're going on the ice, penalty kill and power play based on the teammates, the opponent, and the puck. And I've played this game with NHL players where it'll go up and back and up and back, and they'll turn it over 10 times. And finally what ends up happening is they get in line and they're yelling at each other. Like, listen, I'm sick of going out for 5 seconds on the power play, and I got to kill the next time, and I got to kill for 3 minutes because the other team's doing it right. They're using each other. They're supporting. They're moving the puck, and we're getting it. And one guy's trying to go end to end and turning it over. And now I got to get it off the ice, knock it off. So now the players become the coach. So you can teach, or not so much teach, but you can work on any system going any direction with any number of players in practice. And it doesn't have to be broken down into what it looks like in a game. That setup right there is 1,000 times more fun, 1,000 times more productive, and kids are going to get better that much faster.
Roger, just to follow up on that real quick, would you, so something like that, would you run in a practice and tape it and then watch it with the kids just so that they can?
What age?
I'm thinking Bantams to high school.
Oh yeah, Bantams in high school, absolutely. And what I would do with Bantams in high school is I would actually get as much tape, NHL, anything, power play, penalty kill, forecheck, face-off plays, anything. So here's what we do at our national camps. What we do at national camps is I come up with some themes, and then we do this. We show our best players in the world. So 17, this is a 17 national camp where we get our coaches to understand these are pro coaches and college Division I coaches. We force them to do a player-centered video session where the coach sits in the back, not up front. He runs the machine, but he asks questions and let the kids talk about what they see, so that he's not giving them all the answers, or she's not giving them all the answers. So this is layers, to get players to understand layers. So I'm going to get tape and get them to understand that if I'm going to be good on offense, I can't take the puck from here all the way to there in a straight line. I've got to force defensive rotation, right? And so understanding that I need to know what's happening in front of me, what's coming up on each side of me, and what's coming up behind me. How do I play the game in layers, right? And all the routes that are run by the players off the puck. And so I'm going to just show video of the best players in the world doing good things and doing bad things, right? How to attack good space and how to find the next layer in a game. So that's how I'm going to teach some of that conceptual stuff, is by showing stuff like this. Because the beauty of using the only negative of taping your own practice, in my opinion, is when kids, especially younger kids, are watching and they're not on there, they're disengaged, and the quality of the video is not very good. It's hard to tell who's who. And you can actually really crush a kid, because I used to think I was a pretty good skater until back in the 80s, we watched video and that quality was brutal. And everybody looked bad. So this is HD. Like this is like the best video you can show, because they can see clearly what's happening. And you can go on YouTube and you can find stuff that's like coach's view, so it's up top and you can see everything develop. Great question. And yes, starting at the age of about 13, 14, I would incorporate a video session or two a week, and I would have a theme to it.
Hey, Roger, you'd mentioned as far as corrective action, taking away the puck. I think it's your favorite saying is new puck.
Yep.
What about when we're talking not about player issues as far as on the ice, but we're talking attitude, how we treat others. Teenagers suck, we know that, but we're trying to build an expectation of respect in our association and on the ice. Does new puck work to that extent, or is there other things using?
New puck works for that a little bit, but I would say that you have to be very upfront about what your standards are, and you have to be consistent, and you can't look the other way because it's your best player. And you have to have a conversation. It can't be a dictatorship. You got to give ownership to the players. And I would say starting at the age of, again, 13, 14, there'd be a lot of conversations about what it means to be a good teammate. And I would ask the players, what do you think it means to be a good teammate? Right? Because when you're talking about squirt hockey, like, it used to drive me nuts when parents would all be buzzing in the lobby about Joey, who was by far the best skater on the team, how Joey's a puck hog. And I used to say to him, what do you want Joey to do? Stop and wait for everybody else to catch up to him? Like, what do you want little Joey to do? Like, you put Joey in a full ice game, He's 1,000 times faster than anybody else on the rink. He's aggressive. He gets the puck. He's going to attack, and he's probably going to beat the other opponent, and he's going to get a breakaway. That's not Joey's fault. Joey should not be slowing down if there's nobody in front of him to look for a teammate coming up behind him. That's so unfair to a 10-year-old kid. That's not his fault. That's the format's fault. That's why the Swedes still play half ice at 15U for half the season, to stop that type of behavior. It's not the kid's fault, it's the format's fault. And if you actually taught Joey to slow down and stop and wait, there's going to come a point where some coach is going to get really mad at him when he's 15, 16, where he should attack that space because that's the right play. Now you're making a decision. Like, that's why I hate games where the coaches say you have to make 3 passes. Why would I pass up a good scoring chance to make another pass? That's a decision. You made a decision for the player that they have to make a pass. That might not be the right play. That might be the absolute wrong play in that situation. Let the players decide. Now, you could put in a rule that says, we're going to play a cross ice game, and a goal is worth 2 points, and every pass you make to get to the goal is an additional point. So now they can decide, but a goal is worth more. So if there's space, they're going to attack it. But if there isn't, now they're going to make a pass. They know they're getting an extra point. So there's other ways to skin that cat to get kids to think about moving the puck, and not necessarily putting in a rule that says, like, you have to do this to get to that. Because now you made the decision, not the athlete. And you want to empower the athlete to make the decision. Because you're not going to be out there on the ice in the game. I hope.
That'd get you kicked out pretty quick.
Well, you could get yourself in some trouble for sure. I've seen some coaches that want to get on the ice. They got their foot up on the dasher. They're halfway there.
You know, Roger, around the coaches, like, that's a good point too, right? Like, what's the demeanor for a coach in youth sports, right? What's a recommendation from you to be a good role model on the bench for games, and how you talk to the kids, how you approach them?
So if I were to ask you, those of you that played any sport, who's in charge of practice day?
Coach.
Coach. Who's in charge of game day?
Should be players.
The players. The game is the players. It's not the coach. What you do in practice should dictate what happens in a game. If you're going to stand there and scream every detail and talk to them after every shift and think, coaching isn't talking. You see the best coaches in any sport, they say very little during a game, right? They're not in the players' faces 24/7. And in fact, nowadays, they've got monitors at their feet in the NHL, and they got the iPads all over the place. And I know coaches that have now put rules in that you can only look at the iPad like twice a period, because the players come off the ice and they're watching their last shift. And they're not thinking about what happened. They're living in the past and not moving on to the future. Right? So the game day is the players. So what you say, when you say it, how you say it can have a huge impact. I would say on game day, listen, support, be positive, look for patterns, and ask questions. Don't give answers.
So building on patterns and giving it to the kids. What's your take on like pregame stretching routines like that, or pre-practice routines? Like, so some get crazy, some don't do any at all. It's kind of an interesting aspect of team sport.
It's a great question. I'm going to show you if I can pull it up real quick. So we strongly encourage some type of warm up, warm down, and some type of activity for kids before practice, after practice, before games, and after games. And I'll just show you, I think it's in this presentation. Just bear with me for a second. I'll show you what the Finns do. I go over to Finland quite a bit. This is, you see that?
Yep.
So on the left-hand side would be their 14-year-olds. I help run their national 14 camp at times. So this is on the left-hand side is what they do at 14, which is all body weight, agility, coordination, and balance. And then on the right-hand side is a small village up above the Arctic Circle named Romaneki. It's a group of 10-year-olds in the lobby of the rink. They do this 35 minutes before every practice twice a week. Now, I ran the on-ice practice, and I thought these kids were going to be about 15 minutes late because they did this up until about 10 minutes before practice started. They beat me on the ice. So it's ingrained into their, they had heavy metal music playing in the lobby, and the kids had 4 stations, and they did agility, coordination, balance. And I looked at this, and I was with a friend of mine who works at the NHL now, Matt Herr. And Hersey's son was 10 years old at the time. And I said, Hersey, what would your son look like if he did this? He goes, he'd probably snap his ankle. But these kids have been doing it since they were probably 6, 7. In the lobby of the rink, a dirty old mat. They rolled out of a closet. They're doing tumbling. They got these benches. They're doing footwork. And if you look at the bottom slide with the young kids, you can see the people doing stuff at the other end of the lobby of the rink. So there's 4 stations. They rip through it in 30, 35 minutes. And it's the kids are smiling, they're having fun. And then they go out and practice. It's a game changer. There was rinks that wouldn't let the coaches do it in the lobby, so they went out in the parking lot in February in about 5, 6 inches of snow. They were going to do something. It didn't matter. And then when we go and test some of our best players, this is what they look like. These are some of the best players at 14 and 15, tier 1. Some former NHL players, kids in this group. The issue we have in our country is they've eliminated a lot of PE and eliminated a lot of recess. So our kids are not getting the basis of coordination, balance, and agility. They can't do a somersault. They've never done it. I mean, think about that. And you think about, we're asking these kids to be on a 1/4-inch plate of steel on ice. So if you can encourage your coaches to do some type of activity before practice, after practice, depending on when they have it. And then even better if you can add a layer of decision making to the activity. So we've progressed from some of the stuff that the Finns were doing with like a tic-tac-toe grid. So now you got 2 players doing something, but they're racing to a grid and they have a colored puck and they're playing tic-tac-toe. So now they have to make a decision while they're performing some type of agility. Great question.
We'll kind of open it back up to the group then, Roger, too. We want to be respectful of your time. Does anybody have any last questions for Roger?
Roger, I'm also, as well as the Mike coach, I'm also the goalie person in our association. And so
Yep.
I loved what, at least at the upper levels, incorporating the goalies and some of the stick handling and the passing. That's great. Any other advice that you have would be appreciated, especially at the younger levels? I think one of the issues that we have is a lot of times we don't get the best athletes playing goalie. And that's one of the things that I think we really kind of struggle with in our association. Is there any advice you have for that?
Yeah, I would get the quick change gear. and I would get as many kids experiencing the position as possible. And I would also encourage your goaltenders to do as much of the other stuff that everybody else is doing. Don't let them just go to a skating station. It's just so unproductive. Like so unproductive in terms of player development. Like let them do other stuff. I always, in coaching college, I always made our goalies, I'll share this with you, do some of the stuff the other goalies were doing a lot. And so you can see here, like we're playing a little give and go, skating, passing, decision making stuff. But the goalies are in line and the goalies are going to play the game, right? They're going to do it. Then we're going to go to keep away, and the goaltenders are going to compete in the keep away part of this, right? So I'll get to that right here. You can see the goalies. He's in there competing and battling and skating. If your goalies got to be great athletes. They got to be great skaters. They got to be good puck handlers. They got to be just competitive as heck. And oftentimes we neglect those three things with our goalies in practice. And you don't have to be a goalie expert to allow your goalies to do some stuff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And even, there's with the goalies, a lot of times they're mentally different from the rest of the team. And that's exacerbated when you put them on their own end by themselves when the rest of the team is doing some of this stuff. And
Absolutely.
And it can put your goalies out on a mental island to do that in practice and in games.
Absolutely. And like, so we strongly suggest, if you look at our goalie stuff, we strongly suggest that the younger ages, that if you have two goalies, like at 8U, we actually suggest that they change every 5 minutes. Just think about a young kid sitting on the bench for half a game or not playing at all, like giving up a couple hours on a Saturday and not even getting the game. That's insane. You want to get a shortage of goalies in your association, do that. Right?
Yeah, we
about that as a parent. You're trying to be a good teammate. I'm gonna go sit on the bench and watch everybody else play on a Saturday. At a minimum, split the game. But what about if you just rotate it every 5 minutes? Every 5 minutes, a whistle, the next kid's in. Like, just flip it up. And we've had teams on the girls and boys side that have won national championships in youth hockey that have done that they've rotated their goaltenders every 5 minutes. And you want to see, like, there's always going to be one kid that's a little bit better than the other, but guess what? That's a self-fulfilling prophecy if you don't work with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get equal opportunity. That's a lot of associations complain to us about not having enough goalies, and you go watch how they practice with them, and you watch how they handle them in a game. And you're like, no, duh. I wouldn't want to be a goalie in your association either.
Yeah, we've invested in a second set, so we have 4 sets now of quick change gear.
Yeah, quick change stuff's awesome.
Yeah, and so we get to incorporate a lot of kids when we go off to our jamborees at the 8U level, and then we've taken it a step further this year at the squirts, where we have goalie rotations. They do a 2-week stint, and then 2 weeks we decided was kind of the magic time. If it was just an ice session or two, they're still feeling awkward and they're not loving it. And then, but 2 weeks, that allows, at least for the first half of the season, that allows everybody to play who wants to play. And then you see who is serious when we start games in the second half of the season.
Perfect.
So that was our idea. That's new this year, so we'll see how it goes.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. And we have a whole department. Stevie Thompson oversees our goaltending development stuff, and he's phenomenal. So I would strongly suggest you lean on him for some of that as well.
Yeah. Drew and I are gonna do this as one of his goalie sessions coming up here. So,
He's got the bronze, silver, and gold.
yep.
Good last question, Dylan. Way to sneak the goalies in there. Appreciate that.
You gotta
Well-
take care of them.
Well, Roger, we really appreciate it. This was awesome.
my
Sure it
pleasure.
won't be the last time I bug you. But thanks for taking time for Winona area youth hockey. We appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure.
All right. Have a good night, Roger. Thanks, everybody.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Roger. We really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. You guys take care.
Yep. Have a good one. Thanks, guys.